February 24th, 2024. If it's 7 o'clock on Saturday morning, it's time for This Week in Waukesha. I'm your host, Don Browne, here on WAUK 540 AM 101.1 FM. I am joined, reunited, if you will, with Anya, our producer extraordinaire. And we are pre-recorded and local, not your usual live show, but we have a very special guest, and to accommodate his very busy schedule, we're actually doing this on Tuesday night, the 20th. But for those of you far away and Saturday, the 24th, happy Saturday. And we're coming to you, again, pre-recorded and local from the office of former Alderman Don Browne here in the WAUK studios in downtown Waukesha in the old NAMI building, right around the corner from Theodore Yaumans Park, where we are proud to honor our suffragette heritage here in the Shaw. And this morning's guest, for those of you that are in real time, was referred to me by Dan Schreier, the assistant principal and athletic director at Waukesha South. And as many of you know, Civic Media is, I believe, pulling out all the stops to recognize Black History Month. And our very own Earl Ingram from the Earl Ingram Show is a real driver for that, and really grateful to have that association, that friendship with Earl and so many other great people throughout the civic media stratosphere, if you will. And I wanted to do something about Black history in Waukesha because in general, we don't know enough about our overall city's history, except for Les Paul, the Springs era. I mentioned Theodora Yaumans, and nobody has any idea who she was or what I'm talking about. And but I also know through living here, there are a lot of inspiring young men and women of color that are living Black history in the present day and making a mark and making history now. And as someone that's a huge history and a huge social history buff, I really believe in that history is happening right now. And this young man is a perfect example. I'm proud to introduce from Waukesha South's Black Shirt Nation class of 2014, Tyree Pope III. Tyree, welcome. How are you? Good. I'm so glad you're here. So Dan thought you'd be an exceptional guest because, and you're kind of, if you will, our second in a series. Our first guest was Eli Fields, who's a couple years behind you.
Yep, I know Eli.
All right, fantastic.
Shout out to him.
Yeah, and so, and we had a great show with him a few weeks back. Tyree has a very successful comic series called The Fair Fight. Mm-hmm. And tell us about that.
The Fair Fight is a comic book series based on these three characters who escape a alien concentration camp on Earth, and they go throughout the galaxy trying to overthrow that, or planning to overthrow that alien government that captured them. So it's just a series of stories that lead up to a certain point that is not out yet. So that's kind of how much I can get.
You got to stick around for Is Volume 2 out yet?
Yeah, Volume 2 is out. So Volume 1 and 2 is out. Volume 3 is still being worked on. I don't know.
Exciting.
I'm kind of waiting for the perfect time to put that out.
Sure.
Because it's the end of a trilogy,
Okay.
And then it starts a new trilogy, which is 4, 5, and 6.
Wow.
So so I'm just waiting for the perfect timing,
Yeah.
I feel like Volume 1 and 2 can still, build popularity.
In animation is also part of this, in addition to being in still life comics, there's going to be some.
Yep. We actually premiered our animated pilot last year at the Oriental on my birthday. It was pretty successful.
Wow.
I wish it could have been a little bit more public. It had to be private because it was a private showing, and they didn't want it to be too public. But we did it at the Oriental, which has a lot of history to it, and I really wanted to do it there. So it was nice to be able to have all my family and friends see it. And
so is the animated production, is that available on any of the live streams or?
It's not available at this moment. It will be available. On this service called Even. It's a service that allows creators to pretty much serve their product to their audience. But the audience can pay what you want to see it. So you can pay 50 cents, $1.
Oh, that's cool.
And it allows us to still fund and create
Sure.
freely because
Right.
I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money that's being thrown in a drain, I feel like. And
Sure.
I want to still be able to raise money and still create more. So that's what we're going to do and just
That's fantastic.
put it out there for the audience to be like, hey, you want to see more of this?
Sure.
Donate however much you can so we can keep creating and keep creating stories.
Sure. So even though we're pre-recorded, there is a lot of news that's already happened here in this this younger part of the week that we're coming to you from, and we'll be talking about that throughout the show. But returning with Tyree Pope III of Waukesha South's class of 2014, there's three characters in the fair. It's three central characters: Ultra, Lennox, and Human. Tell us about them.
Oh, so Ultra, Lennox, and Human. Ultra is, I will say, she is. I don't know how to put her because she's like, I don't want to say it centers around her, but it starts with her.
Yeah.
I'll say it's a bunch of short stories that kind of center around Ultra and how they became who they are in Fair Fight.
Okay.
So I did a short film called Al. It's about Ultra's dad and his his journey.
A backstory.
Yeah, it's like a backstory.
I love backstories.
So it's about Ultra's dad, and it's literally a day in the life of Ultra's dad.
Wow.
And then at the end, he's killed in what's called the Messiah Project by the alien government. So the alien government is sent back to, pretty much take out these people with a certain genetic code. So
wow.
So they did that, and it just turned out to be her father. And then there's another story that we're working on right now that centers around Ultra as well, called Traumatized Kids Initiative.
Oh, wow.
And so that's a short film as well that is kind of like showing you the steps of how they got there.
The making of, kind of, sort of.
Yeah. And then now when you read the stories, you're like, okay, this makes a little bit more sense. Or you can kind of humanize the characters a little bit more.
Sure. In some of the reading about the character development, or Ultra is essentially the alpha of the three.
Mm-hmm. The one she's more of the loud. She's going to speak her mind.
Right.
Human's more of the, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let it play out. But he always has a plan.
Sure.
And Lennox is more of like the know-it-all. Like, he's going to tell you when you're wrong. He's going to be the one who's like, no, we should do this. And sometimes he turns out to be wrong. And sometimes it kind of makes him like, not the idiot character, but like the comedic relief
sidekick, if you will. Yeah. Like kind of I think in the writing it said the beta to Ultra's alpha. In fact, he even kind of in many ways sets her up to be that alpha, or shows that respect, or is more willing to yield that leadership to her.
Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to just like in action in a way. He's more of the one that's going to stay laid back, have a plan on how he's going to attack the enemy, and she's more of the, let's just get it over with.
Sure. I love it.
Yeah.
So, what inspired you to get into comics?
I was 18, so I was pretty much fresh out of college, or fresh out of high school. I mean,
heading to Oshkosh for college.
Heading to Oshkosh, and I had started off being a athletic training major.
Sure.
Hated it. I just hated all the hours I had to do in general. Plus, I was playing basketball. Plus, it was just hectic.
Sure.
And I went to my advisor. Like, I want to be I want to write stories. Like, I've been writing stories since I was like a kid, and I would like to write a little bit. Yeah. She was like, "Oh, you should be an English major." Worst decision she's ever made. Because it wasn't really English. It was like, I want to write more film and TV. And Oshkosh had like one of the best film and television programs in the nation for public schools.
Fantastic.
And it just was an easy I took my first intro class.
Okay.
Within like 6 months, I wrote Fair Fight, and pretty much
as a freshman in college.
Yeah.
Okay.
Within like 6 months. Sure. I say going into my sophomore year.
Okay.
Within like 6 to 8 months, I had already written like 5 to 6 books. So,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
And staying on top of your grades.
Yeah.
Sure.
as well as I could, And, but a lot of it came over the summer. So I was staying there over the summer, and I just had the free time from working, and I didn't even have a laptop. I would go to the Oshkosh computer, and I would,
the computer
the lab,
labs, yeah.
and then I'd write them all there.
Sure.
That's how I
that's
kind of went.
terrific.
So I don't even know where the idea really came from. I just started writing,
Okay.
and it kind of just became a thing.
Sure.
What you see now is like the 6th version of it. I'll
Okay.
say. It started off at like 10 pages, and then it got to like 15, and then we had an ending. We rewrote the entire ending.
Sure.
And my friend, his name's Keenan Butler. He's like the co-creator of Fair Fight,
Okay.
and he created all these characters that are like pirates. They're like
Okay.
these space pirates, and he was like, they're super cool. I think we should add them. And I was like, yeah, we should. So we rewrote the whole ending to add them in.
Wow.
And it fit way better than the ending we had. So
Nice.
it worked out pretty well.
And you guys get along pretty well then for being like creative partners. I know it's never easy.
Yeah, he's kind of really laid back. He's kind of taking a step back from it in a way, where it's like, if I'm like, hey, let's do this, yeah, he's up to do it, but he's not necessarily super engaged in it. We do the tables together. Like, we'll go to Comic Cons together and stuff like that, but he's not on the creative side super.
Okay.
He's not super engaged with it. Like, he doesn't care. He's like,
Sure.
I just want to see it happen,
Yeah. Do you get to display your products at Comic-Con?
Mm-hmm.
Neat.
The thing with Comic Cons is that it's very expensive.
Okay. I bet. Yeah.
It's very expensive. So
Sure.
you got to kind of plan it out and
Okay.
budget out which ones you're going to go to, which ones are important to go to, and stuff like that.
Speaking of planning, we're going to learn more about your experiences at Comic-Con. Your co-creator of the Fair Fight series, as well as a little bit about your high school, and then some news, including the Carol Minute here on This Week in Waukesha on WAUK 101.1 FM and the Civic Media app.
As long as you know. Give it up. Share it out. Help who you can. Help who you can. Talk about it. Talk about it. It's late in the morning. Close to the time.
Dear one, the world is waiting for the sunrise every morning.
You're listening to This Week in Waukesha on WAUK 540 AM 101.1 FM on this beautiful Saturday morning. It should be beautiful according to the forecast. Again, we're pre-recorded. I'm your host, Don Browne, joined by Anya here on the board. And great to be reunited with Anya because our guest here, Tyree Pope III, we can say you're an accomplished illustrator, comic genius, if we will, and cinematographer.
Yep.
And I didn't tell you, Anya is a resident movie expert, has a strong background in it, and you even work on the movie festivals right here in Milwaukee.
I did last year. I worked as a production manager for the film festival, and I don't know if I'm doing that again this year, but I had a really great time doing it. They're a great film festival. And I love the Oriental where Tyree had his film premiere. I have not had a movie play at the Oriental yet. That's a huge goal of mine, so that's a very cool accomplishment.
Love to hear it. So, but you two have a lot to talk about because it's great to because I'm a huge movie geek.
Same.
So it's great to talk to somebody about movies like Anya. So and yourself too. So funny story. My wife sent me a text. She's the president of the Boosters. She's a graduate of Oshkosh, class of '98, I believe it was, and she was there for education. Yeah, but she's the fundraiser for South's Booster Club is it's in is it April? But it's an '80s theme.
Mm-hmm.
And our business, I have my own writing business. We always sponsor a poster board that's somewhat 80s related. Like last year, it was a Monopoly theme, the board game. This year, it's 80s, and so we had to pick a movie or a song. And of course, all the pop movies were taken already, and so I chose like Scarface and Risky Business, which was probably like the Graduate of the 80s in terms of
Okay.
like that generational.
I would think that would be taken right away.
And it wasn't, yeah. But then I put the third one, Top Gun, just because I figured my wife would be all over that, because she wouldn't. But I was also thinking like The Untouchables or any of those Mickey Rourke like cult films like Rumblefish.
I've never seen that.
Oh, that's a great movie. The book, it's the same writer that wrote The Outsiders, and The Outsiders was taken.
Okay.
And then there was another one called Mickey Rourke. It'll come to me. Rumblefish. Oh, The Pope of Greenwich Village,
Okay.
which is fantastic. And that's also there's the Pope of Greenwich Village, and there's the Pope of Waukesha South, right? Or the Pope of Milwaukee Comics, Tyree Pope III. Really glad to have you here tonight. Even though for you listeners it's Saturday morning, it's really I feel like I landed the golden goose. And thanks again to Dan Schreier for putting this together. And one of the reasons for having Tyree on was in honor of Black History Month as an example of living Black history and making things happen. So it's okay to ask men this. How old are you?
I'm 27. I turned 28.
You've been out of college 5 years, but you've already been writing comics since you were a freshman.
Yep. I started writing when I was in
as a writer
middle
even
school.
earlier than that. Yeah, I apologize, but in terms of the comic concepts and the fair fight concept.
Yeah, I started writing
quite a few
when
years
I was
under your
like,
belt.
Yeah, when I tell people that I wrote it a long time ago, because sometimes I'll forget like certain stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I literally wrote it.
Yeah,
5 years ago.
That's hilarious.
And they'll like, people will come up to me, like start talking to me about the comic and like things in it, and I'll be like, it feels fresh to me because I wrote it so long ago, and sometimes it kind of I'm writing different things, and it's not really on my mind,
right?
And to hear them talk about it in that way, I'm like, oh, you understand exactly what I was trying to get at.
Sure.
So it's nice to know that 19-year-old me can still connect.
That's neat. Sure.
Almost 10 years later.
Wow, and that's what I was going to ask too. Was the characters like? Did they come from your personal life at all, like growing up in Waukesha or living in Milwaukee?
So I moved to Waukesha when I was a freshman in high school. So
okay.
So I only went to high school out here. I went to
Where'd you grow up? I apologize.
Milwaukee.
Okay.
So I went to Lincoln Center of the Arts.
Okay. Wow.
And then I came to South, and I'd say the characters definitely have a bunch of different people in it. Like each character, it can draw from somebody in the way they move or the way they just speak and the way they talk. So it definitely comes from probably people I met in high school, people I've met throughout life, and will continue to kind of just mold themselves.
Sure. Yeah. And and was like, would you say comics was also kind of an escape?
Yeah, I'd say that definitely from just like college, and it gave me something to write about that wasn't school. 'Cause I like writing, but I didn't necessarily like writing 10-page paper or 15-page, research paper or something like that. I didn't necessarily like that, but I like writing stories and creating stories and creating things that connect with people. And so it kind of gave me that escape like that.
Okay.
So.
Fantastic. Yeah, because I was, like one of the what I've been doing for Black History Month is I'll look for some of these great documentaries they have. And there's one on Run DMC that's phenomenal. I'm only like one episode through it. But one of the members growing up in New York City became a huge fan of comics. That was with everything going on in New York. That was a pretty rough place then in the 80s.
Yeah.
Especially for people of color. And this one guy's escape was comics, like Marvel comics and superheroes. But he wanted to get into comics. He wanted to create a black superhero.
Yep.
Did you know about that though at all?
I did not know that at all, but I know a lot of rappers in that time frame were big comic heads, and they all read a lot of comics and rapped about the characters and stuff like that. And there was a lot of influence in that, especially coming from either the Japanese films, and just they all brought that into kind of like music.
Sure. Yeah.
So I definitely knew a little bit about it.
Oh, sure. And I knew like Superman was created by a Holocaust survivor. Mm-hmm. And so that became the whole concept of Krypton and that was kind of his way to see a different lens from that kind of atrocity.
From that and put the energy into something more positive too.
Yeah.
And just build something a little bigger than that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's gonna last forever. Superman has been around for 100 years.
Yeah. Ageless.
Yeah.
So, hey, in the 2 minutes we have, I wanted to take a moment for a Carol minute to congratulate women's basketball coach Lindsay Schultz on being named the CCIW Women's Basketball Coach of the Year. The Women's Pioneer basketball team were co-CCIW champions. It's the first conference championship for the program in the program's history. And so big congrats. A lot of exciting things going on at Carroll University. So I had to take a moment there to congratulate them. And also, let's see, going back here, we are going to talk about, how are we doing on time again, Anya?
Just a little over 1 minute.
A little over 1 minute. So, yeah. But yeah, really quick, how did you meet your co-creator or your partner, if you will?
So I met Keenan in it wasn't an after school program. It was a summer program before we went to Oshkosh.
Okay.
So
he was from the area.
Yeah, so he was from Milwaukee, but we all got sent up to Oshkosh. We stayed in the dorms all summer before we went to college, pretty much. So we took like 4 college courses over the summer.
Nice.
And then we had that credit when we went to Oshkosh.
Sounds great. Okay, we're going to talk more about Tyree's college adventures, his continuing success, and the fact he also has a career as a media director for a local law firm, and then also about Black History Month and some more local news here on This Week in Waukesha on WAUK 101.1, 540 AM. The Show.
Be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised.
Hey, you're listening to This Week in Waukesha with your host, Don Browne, here on WAUK, and I'm joined by Anya on the board. And don't forget, you can also take This Week in Waukesha with you wherever you go when you download the Civic Media app. So definitely be sure to do that because you don't have to be sitting in your car right now listening to my wonderful voice. But and it's all the other fantastic programming we have throughout the state with our 20+ stations and all the great programming. So definitely do yourself a favor, download the Civic Media app. And again, my guest is the Honorable Tyree Pope III, accomplished award-winning comic book creator of the Fair Fight series.
Yes.
And we were, I mentioned at Eli Fields in the show a couple weeks back, and the big question I wanted to raise, like, why does this, pasty white kid from Orchard Park, New York, care about Black History Month? And for me, as a history major, not history major, but history buff for one, and someone who's proud of my own heritage as a child of Irish immigrants, that there's a debt of gratitude we have to the black community because it was during that civil rights movement that it really, I guess, had kind of, shall we say, peaked or escalated in the 60s. There was also a black cultural awakening. And what that also did was it inspired people of other ethnic faiths to do a deeper dive into their own culture and their own identity. Because, I grew up, my dad was one of those Americans. He was like, if you ever seen Mad Men, he was like Donald Draper. Not the womanizing part, but the doing whatever you could to hide your past, your poverty, your humble roots. And my dad went out of his way to not be. He was a huge Anglophile. He'd watch Masterpiece Theater on PBS and all the things. But yet he never stopped being a devout Catholic. And it's hard to hide your Irishness when you marry a girl named Mary Alice McNamara and you bring 10 kids into the world. Me being the youngest, but it really did. And one of my, I guess you'd say, mentors was a professor of Irish and Irish American history who came of age during that civil rights movement, and a lot of the scholarship became available to a lot of these other cultures so that they could, and so, I mean that in earnest. And it's, I'm also the son of a Latin teacher. That was my mother. And there was, I think the only words of Latin, and I probably forgot them, were words from Cicero that were, not to know what happened before you were born is to be forever a child. And so we all have an obligation to learn about our own history and the history of those around us, the history of people we call our fellow Americans and fellow brothers and sisters. And so that's why for me, like here in Waukesha, where it's still like Waukesha County for many people, is still kind of the Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah. It kind of is.
Yeah. I became friends with a candidate for the U.S. Senate in that last run. And we were talking on the phone one day, and I said, yeah, I'm guessing from your last name that you're urban, ethnic, Catholic, or Jewish like me. And a couple of days later, we're meeting at Euros West when it was still open, and he's like, by the way, Don, I'm Jewish. It's like, it's okay, Pete. We're it's not as bad as you think here. So, but there is still like a reluctance of different, I guess, people of different faiths or cultures to express that identity here in Waukesha County. And I do know, especially from being the father of black shirt students, when you travel to these other schools, that it really is a problem. And we saw it on the news with Arrowhead recently, and some of these others,
Yeah, I don't know what really happened with Arrowhead or any of that, but from my perspective, coming here was like a culture shock in a way, where it's like
from Milwaukee to Waukesha.
Yeah, from Milwaukee to Waukesha, it's like a pure culture shock. You go from being in probably the most diverse place, because I went to an art school, and we had a bilingual section where it was all Puerto Rican and Mexican and different Spanish speaking people, and then a real mix of Asian, white, black, Mexican in the school, to come here where it's like 1%. Or I won't say 1%, like 3 to 10%.
Sure.
Just minority in general. So it was a big culture shock, and it felt like it was only at South that we really had as many minorities, or had the diversity that all the other schools did not. And when you did go to the other schools, it was like they treated South like it was the ghetto school.
I know, and
all that stuff, and that just was always just race underlined,
big time.
Because we had the most diversity, we had the most minorities, so they treated us like the second class school,
Right.
So that's how it always felt being at South sometimes. Yeah.
Well, and it's like my children were educated in the early years, not far from you at the Bruce Guadalupe Community School. My wife was an educator there for more than 20 years.
Nice.
And they loved the experience. And we moved to Waukesha from Brookfield, where we spent 2 years. That's another story. But I went to pick up my son over at Buckner Park. He was just playing like home run derby with his friends, and it was like late summer, early fall, and we're driving back, and he's like, I want to thank you for moving us here to Waukesha, because this is why, this is where I want to live. This is the kind of people I want to be around. I want to have a good mix of friends, and and he wasn't happy when he was in Brookfield, even though he didn't go to Brookfield schools. He had Brookfield neighbors, and so it's great. People forget that this is a university city, so we have those resources to benefit from, and that there is a diversity. But there's still, like I said, in terms of that history, there's a lot we have to unlock. And speaking of which, Waukesha Unlocked is coming back, and get your entries in by April 1st to the Parks Department. It's a great opportunity to share your history, your business, or your organizational history with the fine people of Waukesha, or anyone that's just interested in that loves history and coming here. Great exposure to architecture, culture, different things. Like my wife's now at La Casa de Esperanza, and she called me on the first one in 2021, and she's like, nobody's here. Can you come and help? And so I go, and in the basement, there's an art gallery, and there's a picture of Cesar Chavez, a painting. He's in Watoma organizing a farmer strike in Watoma, Wisconsin. And, when you think of Cesar Chavez, you figure like a lot of his work was in California.
Yeah.
But he traveled the nation helping different farm labor groups fight for the rights. And it's just really like that thing that should be enshrined somewhere, or it should be protected.
Know that.
Right. If you didn't go on this. Yep. So, and then a few years ago when I was on city council, the mayor invited everyone. There was a special event at the county airport, And not many people know this, but one of the Tuskegee Airmen was from Waukesha, Alfred M. Gorham, the only Tuskegee Airman from Wisconsin. And
Did not know that.
yeah, we get there. Alfred M. Gorham was his name. And we get there, and his family's there. And then he's now outgoing fire chief, Steve Howard, shows up. And he wasn't even at the city council meeting that night. So I was like, how do you know? And the mayor sees him. He's like, what are you doing? Well, hey, how did you hear about this? And he's like, well, Alfred Gorham was my next door neighbor growing up in Waukesha. And the whole time I grew up, I knew him, I knew his kids. I had no idea he was a Tuskegee Airman. He never talked about it.
Wow.
It was just that kind of, like many of that greatest generation. And I'm like, that's history. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's history that should be, I'd say, shown and known. You know, you shouldn't go to a high school in Waukesha for 4 years and not know that.
Right.
That's a Tuskegee Airman. Wasn't from here. You know.
Yeah, and he went to Waukesha High School, which was which now Les Paul Middle School, and so Steve and I have this argument that he's really a black shirt, and Steve went to North. He's like, no, I went. He would have been in the North. He would have went to Waukesha North. Well, it wasn't there then, so he's a black shirt. But it is great history, and a potential guest. Although I don't think I'll have her in time for February. Well, this will be the last Saturday in February, but my friend Karen Treadwell, the retired executive director of the food pantry serving Waukesha County, is good friends with Alicia Hayes, the owner, the founder of Pat's Ribs. Oh. Talk about a great story. She is also the first, her family is the first black family to buy a house, I believe build a house in the city of Waukesha.
Wow.
So she's got a story to tell. And so I'm really looking forward to having her on. And it doesn't have to be in February. It's our history. It's Waukesha history. And just like Earth Day is every day, or Valentine's Day is every day, as my wife reminds me, Black History Month is every month. Yes. And so I think, so I really look forward to having Alicia on. I think that'll be true because she has agreed. I think she'd love to contribute and some great stories. And she's also Oprah's cousin.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's who that is. Okay, now I understand exactly who that is.
So, but she was already a celebrity in her own right with the Pat's Ribs. Those are like unbelievable. And I spent a lot of time in Chicago, and one of the restaurants I ran was a barbecue place. And of course, I frequented some of the other great rib places. But Pat's Ribs rivals all of those. Fantastic.
I'll have to check it out. I've never had Pat's Ribs.
Yeah, the bricks and mortar restaurant's not open anymore, but they do tons of catering, so you'll find them. And I think they still have a restaurant in Milwaukee. I think the original might have been in Milwaukee and still be open. Yeah, so
I had to check that out for sure.
Oh, it's fantastic. So, and like any good barbecue place, it's a little pricey, but you certainly get what you pay for. The quality is like second to none.
Hey, I'm willing to pay premium price for quality.
Sure.
Anytime.
Sure. Yeah. So no, I'm glad you shared your experiences, especially that transition from Milwaukee to Waukesha.
Yeah, it was just like I said, it's a big culture shock, and
right.
If you don't know many people, me at least, I had sports,
Right. Yeah.
Sports kind of could introduce you to everybody,
right?
And at least you have friends via that, and you can make friends and meet new people doing that. If you don't have sports, what do you have?
Absolutely. As
a black kid going to a new place where it's majority white people.
Sure.
And you've never seen that before,
Right. Yeah. So, and that was your freshman year at South is when you started in transition. Okay. Certainly. So, but hey, just real quick, speaking of sports, I want to congratulate Aiden Schlieve, the 120-pounder, and Aiden Zerbel, 150-pounder, and Ben Lauer, 144-pound sectional champs, all from Waukesha North, who all qualified for the individual state wrestling tournament this past Saturday. They will compete at the Kohl Center in Madison Thursday through Saturday in the state championship. So congratulations to Aiden, and Ben, and go North Stars. Even though you're not black shirts, we still love you. And I know you will. We know you'll represent Waukesha proud. So yeah, we were talking about Black history in Waukesha, but also Milwaukee. And so like Oprah spent some time here in her youth.
Yep.
Didn't go well, I believe. The great business icon millionaire Chris Gardner grew up in Waukesha, but he didn't. Milwaukee. I apologize. He didn't make his fortune here. A lot of these people left.
A lot of people have to leave Milwaukee to, especially as I'll say, creative, you do have to leave most of the time to.
Sure.
Either you have to leave or you have to spend a lot of your time traveling
Right.
elsewhere to, build up your name and so people can see your face and get familiar with you as a person, as today, as a
Sure.
brand, because
Yeah.
everybody's a brand.
Yeah.
You're creative. Like,
Sure.
people have to get used to who you are, and you have to put yourself out there. They have to know your personality,
Right.
whoever you are. You have to come as you are, and then people will be attracted to you, and
Right.
you'll just end up in the right place, right time. And that's kind of how it's literally always been for me.
So you did some travels recently related to your craft. You were at the Sundance Film Festival.
Yep. I was at Sundance as a member of the press. So
Okay.
I've been working with Carved in Stone for probably the last like four years.
Carved in Stone.
Yep.
Okay.
They're a media news company
Fantastic.
here in Milwaukee.
Wow.
But we've been traveling pretty much across the world not across the world yet, but we've been across the states doing different media outlets. So we've done Rolling Loud, and then we just did Sundance.
So we're going to learn more about who you met and interviewed at Sundance, as well as some of the other things you're working on here on This Week in Waukesha on 101.1 FM and the Civic Media app. Be sure to download that if you haven't already. And again, really glad to have Tyree Pope III here on this Saturday, the 24th.
There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run, or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 District. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay.
You're listening to the Shaw, WAUK.
Buffalo soldier, dread like a rasta. It was a buffalo soldier.
You're listening to This Week in Waukesha on WAUK, 540 AM, 101.1 FM, The Shaw, and on the Civic Media app. I'm your host, Downtown Donnie Browne, coming to you pre-recorded in local on this fine Saturday morning, the 24th, and I'm joined by Anya on the board. And I was just talking to my guest, Tyree Pope III, award-winning comic artist, cinematographer, and also a member of the media through Carved in Stone. Just came back from, or was a few weeks ago now that you were at Sundance?
I'd say, it was about 3 weeks ago.
Sure.
Sundance was, as a filmmaker, it was kind of eye-opening, to say the least. So you're so close, because that's like the biggest.
Yeah.
I won't say it's the biggest stage. It's the biggest stage for like independent filmmakers.
Sure.
So you feel so close to it, and you're like, okay, that goal is like within reach. It felt like.
Sure.
So it was like inspiring for me to be there and interview people I interviewed and met.
And so we were talking off air about another rising star in media, our producer, Anastasia. Anya, she gives me a grimace, but she's taken on a very large role producing shows like Busted Pencils. That's 6 to 7, Monday through Friday. Is that correct? So, and then you're still producing Maggie Dawn, and that's 3 to 4. 2 to 4.
2 to 4.
2 to 4.
We're moving to
Thank
2
you.
to 4 weekdays now. Yep.
So
Starting this, you're hearing this Saturday, so this coming Monday. Oh my goodness. Yes.
yeah, so big developments, right? And Anya plays a big role, I know, in Maggie Dawn's show. And so it's really, so definitely, and those shows are very important too. Busted Pencils. I don't know
What is that?
Chris
Busted
coined a new word.
Pencils.
I don't know. I'm gonna have to get a copyright of that or ownership because I think that could go somewhere. Pencil. But anyway, Busted Pencils, and it's a couple great educators talking about our challenged education system. So very important. And of course, Maggie Dawn, great legal career, great legal mind, talking about the important legal and political issues of the day. And so those are must attends, if you will, here in civic media, and especially here at WAUK. We're honored to have the this deep bench of talent here. So now returning to your time at Sundance, who did you meet?
We got to interview a long list of people. It's the most famous one was why am I blanking on his name right now? Sorry.
That's okay.
The most famous one was honestly my favorite interview because he said a lot of,
Actor though, right?
It was
Or a
Lionel
filmmaker.
Richie.
Lionel
I don't know
Richie,
why I couldn't
really?
remember his name.
Nice.
So that was probably the most famous
I'm old
one
enough to
we
remember when
interviewed.
he was with the Commodores.
Yeah.
Showing my age here, so but
So
yeah.
that was the most famous person we interviewed while we were there. But we got to interview, Oscar winners,
Nice.
Golden Globe winners. One of the clips of, I am blanking on their names because it was so many people. One of the clips from his name's Jesse Eisenberg. He's in The Social Network. He plays.
Oh yeah.
He's done tons of films.
He's done a lot of good work. Yeah.
May I jump in with a
Yes.
film question, Tyree?
Yes.
Was
please.
Jesse Eisenberg there to promote Sasquatch Summer or which film?
It was a
Oh,
real
yeah.
pain with him and
That looked good too.
Is it
sorry.
Kylie
Kieran
Mongeau against him in that
Culkin.
film?
It was him and Kieran Culkin in that
There.
film.
Okay.
And he was there for a Sasquatch pain,
Okay.
but I didn't go to that one because we were going
Mm.
to his other premiere the next day
Sure.
early in the morning. So we didn't end up going to that one.
That's a jarring trailer if you haven't seen it. It's about big feet that live in the forest, and it's very weird. I cannot
I've heard
recommend
it's-
it enough.
I've heard
To
it's
check
pretty
it out.
good too.
Sure.
For people who've seen it while they were there.
Yeah.
And he says some things about Milwaukee and how he loves Milwaukee.
Okay.
And that's been a really good clip that's
Sure.
pretty much went viral.
Oh, neat.
And you don't expect that type of stuff because when you tell people like, oh, they ask where you from,
Sure.
you say Milwaukee, and then they have a story about
Yeah.
Milwaukee, especially if they're, been doing this for a very long time. They might have done media and publicity everywhere
Right,
around
right.
the country. So you
Sure.
never know where somebody's been before.
Sure.
And he said like the city planner actually took him on a full tour of the whole city.
Oh, that's neat.
And he just talked about how he loved the city pretty much. And that was a cool experience. And met Sue Bird. She's a WNBA player.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Super.
4-time WNBA champion. Met so many people. Like I said, it all becomes like a blur
Sure.
because when you're doing it,
You have to go through your phone and catch the pictures that you took.
It's all
So-
becomes a blur because we did it so much, and each day was just such a rush. Like we're trying to get to this place, that place, and within time frames and stuff like that. And when you do, let's say we do like 13 interviews in a day,
Yeah,
it all
wow.
becomes like a blur together.
Sure.
So it's hard to like remember what that person's name was. Like, did we interview them or did we just meet them while walking around? Another person I met who I did not know had connections to Milwaukee. His
Oh, wow.
name's Danny Putty.
Danny Putty. Okay.
He plays Abed in Community. If you ever seen that,
Yeah.
And he's
Oh,
in,
yes.
he's in
I used to
Mythic
work with a
Quest
young woman who
as
was
well.
friends with him in college.
Yeah,
We were at her wedding.
nice.
So I never was pointing, that's the guy from Community. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
it was like-
terrific.
so I met him, and then I
He's
have
good.
no idea he's
Sure.
from Milwaukee. And I'm just like, oh, I'm from Milwaukee. He's like, oh, I went to Marquette. And it's such a small world like that.
Yeah.
You would never know.
Yeah. Milwaukee's got a great history of talent.
Hmm.
If you're, I mean, this is probably, you may not be old enough to remember, but those old Naked Gun slapstick movies,
Hmm.
those writers are from Milwaukee.
I did not
And
know.
they always put Warren Spahn, the legendary left-handed pitcher, in the cast. And at the end of the movie, there would be a disclaimer that he wasn't actually in the movie, but he's the greatest left-handed pitcher ever.
that's
So, yeah. And so that's terrific. We're going to talk more about Milwaukee and Waukesha's great history of talent and more about local Black history here on This Week in Waukesha on WAUK 101.1 FM as we approach the second hour. And don't forget to try us on the Civic Media app.
Your home for the Devil's Advocate.